This is Walker Talks.
That was terrible.
Really good. And we're good. Hey, Jordan, thanks for coming.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. You know what I'm going to do? No, it's fine. So we have a couple of software-related topics we want to run through.
Yeah.
This is your second time being a podcast guest. You just went on someone else's podcast, talked about software, talked about your new ventures kind of in consulting and helping software companies grow and become better versions of themselves, which was cool. And what was that called?
That's the Constant Variables podcast. Guy I just met on Lunch Club named Tim Bornhold. He's a really good dude. I enjoyed being on the podcast. He was a very good intro to podcasting for me. So
yeah,
nice. Now here I am.
It's easy to slam on podcasting, but it's very fun. So, don't knock it till you try it. It's what I say.
Yeah, I mean, at some point I'll write my own or make my own podcast, I guess. But for now, I'm enjoying being a guest, and I get all the benefits of chatting with people, but I don't have to actually produce it. So there's a lot of effort that goes in behind the scenes to actually make it professional, I guess.
Yeah, I definitely don't do that. So dodge that bullet.
Right.
And you mentioned Lunch Club, which is a great service that I hadn't heard before, but I definitely want to try.
Yeah.
If you're a person that likes to meet new people, right? Does it network in some specific way? You say, I like software and beaches and sunsets or something.
So it may or may not actually be AI. It's in their name, but I'm pretty sure they're lying. But what it does do a very good job of, no matter how they actually do it, is connecting people that are enough outside of the normal range of someone you might meet, but still within a certain bubble where it's not uncomfortable to talk to them. You need to have something in common, but not so much in common that you can't, be interested at all.
Yeah. And I don't know, that's also just a type of person too, of someone who's curious versus someone who's not, Sometimes there's people, as soon as a topic falls outside of their circle of interest, it's just a dead fish of a conversation. But
some of the Lunch Club things are duds. I'm sure I've been someone else's dud before too. But you wade through some of those kind of crappier phone calls, or normally it's a video call, which is better in my opinion, because you can read body language a little better. But it's not.
I kind of hate video calls, but they're better.
Yeah.
I'm over it now, really.
You've had a year to practice, so you got to be good at it by now.
Yeah. Well, let's start talking about software, everyone's favorite subject.
Yeah.
Which of those three topics do you want to start with? You think that people would be most...
Let me pull them up. I have a bad memory for this kind of stuff. So, well, maybe we can give a little intro on why software itself should matter to people, maybe even people who aren't traditionally software people. Maybe that'd be a good intro for people so that they're, not bored.
Yeah. Why is it relevant, and what's the impact on your life if you don't care about software at all? Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
This could go very far away from the intended topics, but I mean, okay. So long term, I think that companies are, there's been a market for attention ever since there was advertising, right? But the market for companies trying to get people's attention has become more of a science. They've gotten very, very good at it. We have a lot more data for companies to, use to manipulate you and make you want things, make you want to buy things. I mean, that's essentially the incentive of every company is, try to get your attention and then try to get your money, right? That's what they do.
It's a little cynical, but yeah.
Well, sure. I mean, those are the ones that continue to exist, right? The ones that make money.
Yeah, they captured their market.
Yes, yeah. And so I think that computers and slowly machine learning, different techniques are giving us models that allow companies to manipulate human behavior very effectively. And it doesn't matter if a company knows nothing about you, you're still a human and you can still be manipulated in many of the same ways. So it almost doesn't even matter. Privacy almost isn't even a factor because like they get, there's examples of, you can analyze 10 of a person's Facebook statuses and see if they're like a smoker, just these absurd things you can know just from very small amounts of data. So if you want to prevent yourself from just being manipulated by a lot of forces that are outside of your control, I would say it's good to be aware of it.
Yeah.
That I think is probably the biggest concern for someone who doesn't care about software at all, why you should care about software.
Yeah, so that's the privacy angle, right? I think a lot more people are, I think, first of all, there's that stage of awareness that, people generally need to know. Like back in the 80s or 90s, maybe it was acceptable to not really understand that computers were tracking you. But nowadays, especially with those super annoying cookie pop-up things that you have to accept on every single website,
Which
have
solved
to
the
noticed.
problem of privacy forever.
Right,
Thanks.
privacy solved.
Thanks European Union or
They nailed
whatever.
it. Yeah. So yeah, like you need to, at the very least, be aware, that wherever you go is tracked at least a little bit. It's not that, you go visit a website and they instantly know your personal details, but understanding that you kind of get tracked by these large companies that have even a slight presence on those sites, kind of like a Trojan horse, right? So if you have a Facebook login button on your website, Facebook knows that your user has visited your website, and now they've managed to track that, and they've added that to their dossier about you. So now Facebook has a little extra data on your search history, which is why you get these magic, sort of these scary moments, right? Of, okay, well, I was just, searching about, cancer, and now Facebook is advertising cancer hospitals to me. Okay, great. So it's not always so bad when a company has access to that, because they don't necessarily have direct power over you. But the other scarier part of the privacy argument, I think, also is that, there's security leaks. Facebook had the big Cambridge Analytica one a while ago. I can't remember what year that was. 2016 maybe? I don't know. It's a couple years back. Yeah. And people realized, oh geez, Facebook's tracking so much about us.
Yeah.
And those leaks happen all the time. There's this website called Have I Been Pwned? PWNED. That basically informs you every time your email address gets like pulled up, I guess, in a hack of some kind. Like it got lost, like the database that contained your email. Now they have your password.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right.
I feel like I visited one of those sites before. I don't remember what the result was. I mean,
everyone's on there.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If you've been on the internet for more than a year or two, you've been hacked at least once.
I mean, I thought that the craziest thing about Cambridge Analytica was not simply the amount of data that was being tracked, but the what they were able to accomplish with that data, right? I mean, I'm trying to remember exactly what they did, but I mean, I thought that's where some of those things about like just analyzing a couple of public things on your Facebook profile. They could like determine your sexual orientation, you know, like what things you're interested in, all sorts of things. I mean, yeah, I mean, that's the thing I care. It's almost talking about privacy is just, it's not silly, but it's really not the relevant point, I think. Right. You know,
it's control, right?
It's control. Yeah. I mean, and you just have to think about, all right, what are they going to do? What power do they have? And if I want to be in control of my life, what landscape am I really navigating in? You know? And another one, just to bring it up, is like Target. All they were doing is just tracking, I think, purchases people were making at their stores, and then sending coupons based off of those purchases. And then, you know, they ran some algorithms to pick up some patterns and sent that, you know, 15-year-old girl a bunch of coupons about pregnancy.
Yep.
Or like cribs, and and the dad was furious, and a week later like called them and was like, yeah, she is pregnant. So, and that's just like
your stuff.
You know, that's not like 1984 stuff. Like Target always had the ability to know the things you purchased from their store, right? But now we have tools to analyze that and extrapolate an amazing amount about your life and stuff. So I don't know. I think the privacy argument is just, I don't know. It's pointless. What do you think?
Well, there's the conspiracy theorist part of this that I can't remember the dude's name, but he wrote a book about it, of basically how they took the Cambridge Analytica data, I think, or maybe it was at Cambridge Analytica, and what they were trying to do is actually sort of control the mob, so to speak. Like,
right.
They would notice patterns. Like if someone or some particular topic went viral, you can do sentiment analysis on it, which is basically like, how do you feel? Or how does this tweet feel? How does this Facebook post, like, how emotionally charged is it? Is it angry? Is it sad?
Right.
Etc.
Grammarly has that, you know. This email sounds stern or something. Yeah.
You sound like a real jerk. And that's good for that kind of stuff. But you can take that and you can sort of analyze en masse. And I think this is where people forget how powerful computers are nowadays. Like you can get basically a horde of like really fast computers to analyze literally every tweet that's happening in real time. Granted, you'd have to use a lot of processing power to do that, but you can filter it down so that it's reasonable enough that you could do it. And with statistics, you don't even have to do everything. You can get an idea just by following a particularly active tag, hashtag on Twitter. So I think what they were doing is they were trying to find patterns of, if something was mentioned, how would people respond? And of course, what they find is that humans are very predictable, even though we all think we aren't. We all are in our own ways. There's a limited number of actions that you can take to respond to something. You know, someone like you might be more, stoic about something, or at least not. You might not externalize it on social media, but other people will take like the fake news articles and such, and they'll like pass them around and get mad, and then you see their series of follow-up posts, and you see essentially that software, due to like this tracking, is influencing behavior. And that's where you get to that, I think, that troublesome part that you brought into this conversation in the first place, is that it's the software at the hands of people that is literally controlling masses.
Are you saying when there's kind of a secondary feedback loop sort of thing going on? Or what do you mean exactly, the software? Like people using the software, or the software itself changing behavior?
So the software itself, of course, is just a tool being used by people to do something with it. But you wouldn't have been able to figure this stuff out without software because of how fast it is. But the software is just analyzing behavior. You know, if you do this, how do crowds of people respond in general? If I post this fake news article 1,000 times, across a bunch of different social media sites against influencer accounts, will it become real news?
Right.
And how long does it take? And how long until people start, stocking up on toilet paper and, canned vegetables to survive the, upcoming plague that they think is coming?
Yeah. And I heard of like one guy who he said, like, I think it was just him, like he knew what he could post to get it to be like trending on Twitter. Just, it's it's kind of terrifying. I mean, it's like, the fitness of an idea, right? You talk about memes and
my favorite topic.
Yeah. And how they reproduce. And, it can be really disheartening, thinking about how like the truth of an idea is totally separate from its fitness in terms of how successfully it can replicate and spread. And I don't know. I mean, there's not a lot of hope in that idea. So like, hopefully there's some sense in which like the truth and the fitness of ideas are attached, and we can actually work some system so that true good things are trending on Twitter, without it just being like curated by some person at the company, because that's a whole other issue. Anyways,
I can be even more cynical than you on that one if you'd like.
Go for it, yeah.
So the cynical view there is actually that if you're talking about evolutionary fitness for ideas of like memes, essentially, like, Dawkins proposes, the other corollary, I guess, for like human evolution is that our brains are designed to recognize danger, right? So we're highly attuned to dangerous things, which is why these memes or these fake news things work so well against us, because they tune in directly to our subconscious fears, or sort of like this perception that my tribe is being attacked, for example. Like you see this all the time in the political news, right? Like if you feel like your personal beliefs, which you've like assigned a whole lot of your identity to, are like under attack by some news article, like you're going to respond to that. Like your brain is designed to take that into account. It cannot ignore it. It has to react.
Yeah, you feel compelled to. And yeah, like the proof is in the pudding. The list of things that end up bubbling to the top all fit the same. They all fit the bill of like, well, this idea has hacked people's brains. This idea has hacked people's brains. You know. So I don't totally understand, or like I don't know how to think about the memosphere, right? Like, you could kind of think of the biosphere as one plane, and biological life kind of exists within the biosphere, and there's certain things that are selected for, like 10 fingers and all that sort of stuff, like the things that define the characteristics of the stuff that survives in the biosphere. It's like a certain set of rules. But then the memosphere is like built on top of that inside people's minds, and it's like a different landscape. But it's also like dependent on what's good for us as humans in a way. Like it's not completely isolated from that. There's some truth to the idea that people don't have ideas have people. Like there's some truth to that, but it's like, well, like it's our brains, and they are the way they are for a reason, to help us succeed. So I don't know. I'm not completely hopeless about the situation, but
yeah.
it's a tough problem. I don't know. I'm hopeful. I feel like Twitter's probably, I trust Jack Dorsey a little more than like Mark Zuckerberg, when it comes to this sort of stuff. I feel like Jack is just a bit wiser. Maybe that's naive, but
I don't know that he has control over it anyway. At this point, they're both platforms. I mean, Zuckerberg, I guess, does, but like, yeah, I guess to some extent, Twitter doesn't really interfere as much. Mm-hmm. Although, they did ban the president.
They did that.
So maybe I'm wrong on this one. I'll concede that point.
Yeah. I mean, Twitter is not just that one guy, right? So I don't know how the future will look, but anyways, that's nuts. So let's go back to like software and what you do.
Okay.
Are you going to solve this problem for us, or are you going to help software companies build better products?
I am not going to solve the societal problems that are due to software, but I think a lot of these issues that software has are like sociological and behavioral. Whether that's the software usage by like people, for example, like Twitter users, or whether it's, the people who actually built Twitter. There's like a lot of these like psychological factors that go into that. Mm-hmm. They're a reflection of the people who build it and people who use it.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll, I'm sure, talk about that a little bit more, but yeah, my goal in particular is to help companies, like when they're building their software, like to build it better. So turns out after like 20 something years of building software that the one constant that I've seen is that we're all pretty bad at making software. We make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
Those mistakes aren't always, horrible,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not all about mistake reduction either. But if we can build great software, right? Like how would that positively affect our world? Like what if we'd had something like let's use Google Docs as an example. What if we'd had like a really good collaborative word processor in like 1990?
Mm-hmm.
Like we would have had like just so many more years, I think, to like change the style of how people work. Mm-hmm. Instead, we got trapped in this like sort of mediocre Microsoft Word world mm-hmm. for a really long time.
They added comments. They tried.
Yeah, but like the workflows were just so messed up for Word. Like you would save your Word file like V2 out to some network drive that would get corrupted, and then you couldn't open your file, and then now it's V3 and then final version.
Yeah.
And then you can't open it because it's a new version of Word, and like we have all these things that we've just kind of accepted as reality, but they're really just bad software. Like the whole concept of even doing that is stupid, but we accept it.
Yeah.
And I'm not under any illusion that I can fix the entire world's software, but there's these questions that you ask as a software company where you're like, well, what can we do to improve people's lot in life, make people more productive, or actually I really like this concept that Donald Miller has in this book called Story Brand, where your customer wants to be the hero of their story, right? So that's what your software should be doing, should be making your customer a hero in their own eyes.
Yeah.
And a lot of us build software, like if you're a software product company, like you want your product to be the hero, or you want your company to be the hero, right? Like Google is your hero for providing you all this great info. Well, that's not true, is it? Like, you want to be able to use Google searches to look smart, for example. Or you want to use a Google Calendar to remember things so that you don't forget somebody's birthday. Like, it makes you the hero in your own life to your circles versus, having to go credit Google.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate to use Google as an example because they're, kind of dealing with their own privacy issues and other problems. But, for all the bad stuff that they do, like they do have that one crucial thing of being customer first in so many ways. Like, they try.
Right. Yeah. Like Amazon, customer obsessed sort of values like that does always serve a company well, and it serves the customers well, obviously.
Yeah.
Maybe not the workers, but there's a lot more customers than there are workers, so
it's true. And I think Amazon gets a bad rap, and I know people who work at the Amazon warehouses, and it's like, yeah, it's a grind. A lot of jobs are
warehouse job.
A grind. It's a warehouse job. Like, you go into it expecting that, but they pay really well for a warehouse job.
Like already a $15 minimum or something.
Yeah, at least like most people are like either at or above 20 an hour, and when you're there, you work hard. I think that's okay.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Now.
Yeah, Esther had that job for a while. She was a picker, and she liked it because I think she there's some like 10 miles a day or something absurd.
Wow.
I don't know if that's accurate, but helped her exercise.
Yeah.
Didn't need to exercise any other time. I've thought about that a lot. It's like I kind of want some job that's manual labor, so I don't have to work out. It's like, why would you
2-in-1?
Yeah, if you could get paid to exercise, why not just do that instead of not being paid to exercise?
I love the combo thing. One thing I'm doing right now is instead of like sitting down and typing at my computer, like when I need to write something, like write an email back or write a new article or content or something like that, I do it while I'm out on a walk, because it's finally nice enough to go.
That.
Yeah, it's nice enough to go out on a walk. Finally. And then you get kind of the 2-in-1. I get the exercise, and I also it clears my head.
You feel like a hero.
Yeah, I feel like a hero in my own story.
Yeah, that is a cool idea. Going back to the make the customer a hero. I mean, I actually it's kind of an unrelated thing, but I think like a lot of the awful lies and evil in the world is from people obsessing, like insisting that they are the hero in their own story, and like sometimes it's you need to be comfortable with the fact that you're like the villain,
in your own story.
Yeah, it's like, man, you know what? That was bad. That was bad. And it's just move on. I feel like if every single moment, like you're always insisting that you're the hero and that let me find someone else to blame for this thing that happened, it's like you just end up lying to yourself.
Yeah.
So I think it's awful and pernicious, but a great idea for software.
Yeah. I think that there's a couple things about that are important. Obviously, you don't need people to be selfish and prideful. Like, that doesn't serve the world. But empowered is good.
That is good.
You need somebody who is empowered to do what they need to do so that they can impact the world positively.
Yes, and certainly your vision for yourself in the future should be that you're the hero of the story, right? That's the thing you strive for.
Well, and that's the hero's journey too, right? Like, you're not there yet, but you want to be.
Yes.
And now you need, this guide to come with you to like train you. Right. Yeah.
I love Asana. It's so
Asana
great.
is nice.
I feel like a hero when I cross off a task and the unicorn comes out of the corner.
I know, it's like magic. Woo.
Yeah.
And a rainbow unicorn too.
Yeah, it's amazing.
You did a good job on that.
Okay, so you want to help software companies.
I should probably explain this better, right?
I guess so.
I like
to
get sidetracked on topics that we're talking about. So this is a problem of mine. So my customers are their own heroes, right? Like they need to work on their product so that they can serve their clients. My job is to guide them into how to do that more efficiently, faster, and just like with a focus on the long term. Because a lot of people are really good at serving their clients through their product, but they haven't had the experience of how to grow a product from like, after you're a startup to like being mature. They're good at like certain points in there, but like there's a different skill set. That's how do you get someone from the startup phase into the maturity phase of a company, right?
What got you here won't get you there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when you're there already, it's easy to look at processes and people and things like that, and you can make edits, because edits are always easier than, your initial rough draft, right? But there's that, I don't know, it's like a crucial inflection point, I think, right after you start making money as a software product, where you have to get good at it enough to the point where you can grow into, we'll call it a real company, in air quotes. So not every company makes that shift. They get stuck being in like the perpetual like startup mode where everyone's crazy all the time, and they don't grow successfully, they grow wildly, like almost organically sometimes, and that's it's dangerous. It's not that it's impossible to grow that way as a company, but it's dangerous because you're kind of at the whims of whoever's in the most control or who has the most energy at your company that day. You're not growing with purpose, you're just growing. I'm 36 now, and I would prefer to grow my muscles, for example, when I work out, instead of just my belly, because I'm eating all the time. There's multiple kinds of growth. Some are good, some are not so healthy.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, when you first said that, transitioning from like hyperactive growth into just like something to a real company, the first thing I thought of was like kind of there's a period of growth that if you stayed in that mode forever, it would be unsustainable, but you're just trying to grow to the point where you could become a sustainable business. And I mean, it's the inflection point of basically, are you positive, are you making money,
cash flow positive? Yep.
Yeah,
you want to be in the black. And
the problem with like a lot of the Silicon Valley things is like it's just growth forever and ever and ever, and keep investing, keep growing, but you're not a real business because you're not like, it's not a sustainable thing, and you're not making money. So it is kind of the same thing, but you're also talking about there's aspects of that startup phase where there's some unstable personality dynamics that kind of go along with it, right?
That was a diplomatic way of saying it, wasn't it?
Oh, I don't know. I'm amazing.
Well, yeah, I mean, what got you here won't get you there is one thing. Who got you here may not get you to the next stage either. It's different people are good at different aspects of, a life cycle of a business.
Yeah, that's true.
Some people are really good at hammering out prototypes. Like if I weren't in the business that I'm in, that's what I would be doing, just hammering out prototypes. Fast at it. I understand the way, the problem needs to be solved. It's just clear and I can just go do it. Some people are really good at that. Other people are really good at, keeping a company stable over the long term. After you have a mature company, it's like, you want to milk it for as long as you can. And there are people who are like just geared towards stability. Like that's what they love doing. Like we don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to add any new features. We want to like turn this thing into like the most efficient machine ever without actually changing it.
Yeah.
And they're excellent at that. That is not what I like to do. That's boring to me, but I appreciate that there are people who are designed that way.
Yeah. So that's not you, but you could still you at least understand it, and you understand what a business needs to be sustainable.
Yeah. There's a middle phase there where you're past the prototype. Mm-hmm. You know that you've got a decent idea because people are buying it, and you need to make it so that you are able to grow from like just making a little bit of revenue to making a lot of revenue. Mm-hmm. You don't have to grow forever, and not every business needs to endlessly grow like that, endless fundraising cycle mm-hmm. that a lot of VCs do in Silicon Valley.
Right.
That mindset actually frustrates me a lot, because it's like, if the only intent of your company is to like sell it off to the next round of investors, it's like you don't actually care about your customer probably as much as you should. You're not like, what's the point of your business? And it's not that everyone's like that, and I know you can care about more than one thing, but I've just seen too many people do that grind cycle of, okay, we're going to make a new startup and get bought out, and that's our end goal. It's like, what about the actual product? And then the product, goes into limbo for the next 5 years after it gets swallowed by some investment company or megacorp. Yeah. And it dies, and you end up not serving your customers, but at least the investors got their exit. I don't like that. It makes me mad.
Nice.
So I mean, that's part of the motivation for me. It's like, why do the work that I do? It's to help people serve their clients better. Like, you can get there sustainably by yourself. Well, not by yourself, but like without necessarily the external investment or the continuous investment cycle. You can get to a sustainable point where you're generating revenue and reinvesting that revenue into your company and growing and getting better and building on that, instead of requiring continual investment, or worse, going into a slow death because you never made the changes you need to go from past being like a prototype to being like a legit product.
Do you have some like stories or examples of situations like this that either went well or went poorly?
Yeah.
And that you've been involved in?
Yeah.
That you can share.
I have to not give too many details, I guess. So yeah, a company I worked with a long time ago, we were building websites for car dealerships, which sounds boring, and it is. But the thing that we really did well at that company was we focused on what the customer needed. Okay, so not just what the customer wanted, but what the customer needed. So that worked out really well for getting the first version of the product out the door, right? The customers really liked it. They were like, oh, this is cool. But really we were running with like a single website design that you could select from. Everything was the same standard. Everyone's site looked, the same. That worked out really well for a while, but if we hadn't ever made any changes, I don't know, we would have had maybe 50 clients total, like ever. There's only so much you can do with a single design. There's only so
clients,
much.
What do you mean? Like people?
Websites. It was like a website generator basically for car dealerships. So like if you had, like a Nissan dealership down the road, they have a website that you can go to and like look at their cars and buy their cars and stuff.
So you didn't just make a website, you made a website generator for car dealerships.
It was a product, a real like website.
I see.
Like an automated website product. It would suck in their inventory. It would like have lead pages for like if like you wanted to go buy that Nissan Rogue that you saw on the site, you could say, hey, I like this.
That's really cool.
Put in your info. Yeah.
It's a good idea.
It's a really good idea. Really good product idea. So there's actually two customers in this case. There's the dealership, who is full of psychotic weirdos, and the actual person who wants to buy the car. So you have to serve both.
Okay.
But in a way, you're kind of serving the end user a little more indirectly, because your client is, the psycho at the dealership who's paying you.
Paying you, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so like we had a good idea. The idea like had merit. It was good. It just wasn't scalable because it took so much effort to like put a new website out the door. You know, we had to like get a new account exec to manage like the relationship with the dealer and like make sure everything was cool. We had to like hire a person who would like take care of and track their inventory. Like hire multiple programmers just to like do basic stuff and like edits, small edits. And the software itself was just like hard to maintain. Like we prototyped it and put it into production at first. So it was okay. And it worked, but you can't scale that to, 1,000 car dealerships and give all of them a website. People are going to start to get pissed because it's like there's no variety. Everyone's website looks the same. No one wants that, especially car dealerships. Even
if you manage to pull that off, they would all be the same. Yeah. Which I don't imagine you could do that. It sounds like it would just be insanity.
Yeah. We couldn't have scaled to
all those relationships with all their.
Yeah. So the more the difference is like the more that we would have added, the worse the company would have gotten. The worse the software would have gotten. That's the measure of a good product and like a business that's fit, is that the more you scale, the easier it is to add a client. Right?
Interesting. Yeah.
So we had to shift a lot of things around. Like we had to hire a lot of people. We got a really neat hiring process that, for better or for worse, helped us hire some really top tier talent very quickly. I don't know that I would do it nowadays because it was like super numbers focused. Nowadays I would probably use more like intuition and relational type hiring, but it worked at the time. We built out like a ton of internal tools to like either automate or eliminate a lot of the work that the account execs would have to do as like part of their questionnaires and their day-to-day work. We automated reporting. We automated like the ads, like the whole website itself was ad driven. It's not like you just got a website. You also got automated advertising. So like someone goes and types into Google, like, I want to, 2021 Ford F-150, right? Well, you're going to get ads. So this would automate the generation of those ads, like based on what inventory the car dealer had. So you can say, I've got like a used, 2013 F-150. If someone searches for that, or if someone searches for like a new F-150, they would get that. So it would actually like direct you straight into a landing page automatically generated just for that vehicle.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And it would show up in like Google search results of like, I'm searching for Ford F-150 2021. You have a page in search results for 2013.
You would have an ad that would direct you straight into that vehicle's like dynamically generated landing page.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
And it would be like locale specific too. So if, like we're here in Newark, Delaware.
Sure.
So if someone searched for an F-150 in Newark, Delaware, it's going to advertise for the dealership that we had in that locale.
I really want to know how all of that works, but I feel like that's not the point of the story.
Well, the point of the story is actually that it's automated.
Right.
So dynamically generating out those ads so that you don't have like a person who has to think about the ad spend or who has to report on the ad spend. Like all that stuff takes a ton of time. And, when you're building out a company, you have to move away from being so reliant on people doing computery things. Right. And you've heard this before a million times from me, but like the issue is that you can't scale people very well.
Yeah.
And actually a deeper, worse issue is that you're asking people to do things that people aren't really even that great at. And it's not like a good use of their time.
Yeah.
Right. So like these account execs that we had, we had them stop doing these like automated reports and these like ad spend, questions or whatever, where everyone had to be like a Google AdWords expert or whatever. And we just automated it. And then that allowed our account execs to be more personable, because now all of a sudden they have extra time in their week where they're not sitting here on a spreadsheet thinking, gee, what can I spend? They're thinking, okay, how can I serve my customer better? Right. Yeah. So now we're back full circle of making your customer the hero of their own story again. Mm-hmm. So like, instead of our account execs not being able to even spend a little bit of time on each customer with personal care, like now they can make that customer like feel better, for one, automatically through like these processes that would just automatically run and do their thing. And now all of a sudden these car dealerships are making more money. But second of all, the account execs could be a lot more personable and like be more proactive, intuitive, think, gee, this guy really likes when we call, maybe we'll go down and visit him. And you retain your, I mean, that makes them happy. 15 years before COVID, right? So you can actually do that kind of thing. And it's that kind of stuff where you make your customers happy. That's like above and beyond just like selling them a software product. That, it's relationship building and making them happy.
Yeah. I mean, well, first thing is like software is, when you describe it like that, companies weren't able to scale in the same way until software came along.
Yeah.
Like there's a whole,
and especially the internet, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, the fact that you have one software process, it's not very expensive to copy and paste it onto another server. Takes 2 seconds, but yeah, you couldn't do that with people. And it's almost like your product is the software that does the tasks, and then there's just this shell of people who interact with other people. But like, sort of, I mean, I don't know. Like at this point, your account exec is not doing the quote unquote work of the service itself. Which is good because it's boring and dull, and computers are better at that sort of thing. Yeah. They're better at the quote unquote work.
Yeah. The tedious, repetitive work. Yep.
Yes. And yeah, it just leaves people to be relationship managers, really. And kind of the leaders of the organization to decide what your values are, what direction you're going in, like, yeah, stuff like that.
Well, you can be creative.
Yes, creative. Yeah.
I think it's really hard to be creative and strategic when you are in the weeds. And this is a problem that I see all the time advising people. It's like, well, if you weren't spending, 20, 30 hours a week on this boring crap, you could be spending your time thinking. Like, okay, like why don't we leave a little time in our week for thinking about stuff that matters?
That's what the shower's for.
Yeah, exactly.
It's my hour-long showers, just
right. It's actually saving you money and time.
Yeah. So if you are feeling consumed by tedious tasks, you don't have space or time to think, or you feel like you don't, Jordan Ambra is here to help you. Right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I think that there are a couple places in like software companies where there's like that inflection point of, okay, where do I need help?
Yeah,
it's not necessarily that you can't do it yourself. A lot of companies can do it themselves, and that's great. But do you have the time? Do you have the energy? Do you have like the people on staff like right now who are able to do it? It's like, well, maybe, but a lot of times it's just easier to hire someone else like me to like coach through that transition time. So like
a therapist, it's so much easier to see someone else's problems than to see your own. It's just true. So true. Like, it's so easy to identify all the ways that someone else could improve.
Yeah.
Than see it for yourself.
Yeah, that's unfortunately true. Well, you get used to it. You get used to your own problems and you dismiss them.
Yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate, but the solution is easy. It's just inviting someone else to give you advice, really.
Yeah.
Done.
Well, there's symptoms, right? It's like if you looked at your own health and you're like, okay, well, I have this rash, or, like my leg is broken. Like, you're not going to just sit there and wait it out. You're going to try to like diagnose it. Well, there's symptoms for software companies too. Like what are the things that are big problems? So, well, there's a lot, but for example, long backlogs of issues that never really get dealt with, or like deploys are scary, and we worry that it's going to break something. Only one guy knows how this one feature is built or this system works, and if he dies or leaves the company, or the company goes under. It's that kind of stuff where you notice these symptoms, and it's like, well, you need to deal with it. Whether you call my company to help you, or you find a way to deal with it yourself. I think the important part is getting that help, or being that help for your company and improving it.
Yeah. Do you think that there's a real difference? This is kind of another one of the topics we picked out, but is there really a difference between being kind of a wise individual and knowing how to organize your life versus kind of being a wise business person, or owner of a company and knowing how to organize your company?
Do you mean like how your personality or your traits like affect your company? Is that
not really? I mean, it just seems like when someone has a lot of insight into how the world works and how people work, it's just like, I feel like it applies equally to your personal life and your work or a business structure. Knowing what's healthy for people, in terms of like, let's say work-life balance, or knowing what the value is in a person's perspective. Like, that's going to benefit you equally in your personal life and in a company, of like inviting different perspectives on an issue and like embracing it. I just feel like it's all the same lessons, I guess. What do you think?
I think we make too much of a distinction between personal and business. Really what you're dealing with is people trying to get along with each other. And
yeah, most of the time it's just that.
Yeah, I mean, if you can figure that out in your personal life, then, great. Like, you've probably identified things that you like or dislike about yourself and other people that you have to train yourself about and discipline yourself about, right? Like, if you're a disorganized person at home, like, you're not going to just magically show up to your desk at work and be like, yeah, I'm super organized.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Probably not.
Maybe. I mean, like, my dad, for example, always left an extremely messy desk at work, but his thought processes were very organized, highly organized. So it's not always a clear reflection on like what's going on in your head. And as a programmer, like it's pretty cerebral a lot of the time. You're sitting there in your head creatively thinking of how to fix and solve something. But I think more often than not, whatever your personal discipline is that you need to work on, it'll translate into your work life too, because you're still the same person. The people you're working with are still people too.
Do you, or have you ever needed to kind of coach, like teach some important life lesson as the solution to the business problem? Like, have you ever to tell someone, I just think you're a jerk, or more like,
I've been the jerk before.
Yeah.
I had to solve that for myself, times of self-reflection of like, okay, when I was going through like highly stressful times in my life, like I noticed that I was lashing out at other people. It's like, that's not fair to them. They don't deserve that. Yeah, it's sometimes hard to train people on that, I would say, because I'm not being hired as a therapist or a life coach necessarily,
But isn't that the solution?
it kind of is. You just have to approach it a little differently. It's like if someone is treating people badly at work, like you treat that differently than someone you meet at the store or a friend, because there's a level of like professionality, I guess, that you can approach it with. You still want to be cognizant, I guess, of people's feelings and that kind of thing, but I think with a work relationship you can be more direct, I think, and not worry as much about hurting one person's feelings. I had to fire a guy one time, and it was really uncomfortable. Like, and I was talking to my boss at the time, hey, like, I really don't like this. I don't want to fire the guy. Like, what if he can't find a job? Like, what about, how he feels? What about, how, the like family and kids and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I totally get it. But what about the other dozen people on your team? Oh, yeah, they have feelings. Most of them had families or like themselves or, something to worry about too. It's like, we over care, I guess, about the person that we're directing, our advice to, but like we forget about all the other people that their bad behavior is negatively affecting. Right? So
yeah,
sometimes you just have to be the bad guy, so to speak, and be like, look, you can't treat other people in your company like this. Sometimes that's leadership.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's a good thing. And that's what you need to do in real life too.
Yeah.
That's the exact same thing.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah. I mean, so I kind of get what you're saying. Like the social contract is a little different. You can be a little bit more direct because you're trying to get stuff done. You're not always trying to, meet emotional needs. And by not always, I mean, usually not. You shouldn't be. But, I don't know. I mean, I think before we started recording, you're talking about how humility is the key to working well with other people and respecting their expertise, right? Like, yeah. I don't know. Have you ever found yourself trying to communicate that idea to someone that you're consulting?
Yeah. So where that's gone really poorly from like a negative example is every once in a while I'll see like a dysfunctional team who doesn't know like how to work together very well, right? So what you're dealing with is sort of like a conflict of personalities where all they want to do is fight with each other for no good reason. They have like this long history of hating each other, or one person has a bigger ego than another and has to prove what they know at every turn, right?
Yeah.
So there's like pride gets in the way there. But like if you can humble yourself and be like, okay, I don't have to prove that I know more about this than the other guy, and just let them do their work, like I can move on and do my stuff. Right? And that what that is trusting people to do the job that they've been hired to do. Doesn't mean that you can't help them, if they are going down a wrong path. I mean, that's what code review is for. It's why we have teams, so that, knowledge is shared and responsibility is shared, so that, ideally you get, a sum of the parts that, is greater than individuals. So, yeah, I think that where I've seen that go really well is people being really intentional and comfortable with their expertise. There's this really unfortunate plague, I guess, of imposter syndrome in the industry, where people who are really junior, it falls on both sides, but the people who are really junior are usually also willing to ask questions. They're used to being wrong. They're used to not knowing something. It's okay for them. But then you get like 3 or 4 years in, and it's like all of a sudden people have this huge expectation on themselves that they're just going to know how to do anything. Like, well, why? Like by 3 or 4 years in, you've maybe seen two, maybe 3 products total, and maybe a handful of programming languages or frameworks. But like, you're not going to know everything.
Yeah,
it's okay.
Tech's always changing. Like if you're a developer, you're always going to be asking questions and in some state of not knowing what you're working on, kind of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's all types of programmers, and it's like, if you're a front end person, like you're just not going to know the back end stuff yet. You're not going to know how databases work yet. Although hopefully you'll learn soon, because that's super crucial. But so yeah, this imposter syndrome sets in after a couple of years where people like forget, oh gee, I don't have to know everything. And they don't ask as many questions, and they aren't as curious, and they become prideful. And I think it takes a real effort to recognize and be willing to be humble. And the more successful teams are the ones full of people who are okay with that, and where there's like this permission to be wrong.
Yeah.
And there's this permission to ask stupid questions, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, because it's insecurity, I guess, at the base, or, and then you just end up in a situation where people are trying to cover their rears of being like, exude confidence and pride,
Yeah.
But it's just awful. But yeah,
it messes people up, messes up teams too.
Yeah, it messes things up. I think that, if I was a company looking for a really high quality consultant, even if it's just for software, I feel like the wisdom is half of it. I get probably, do you try to market like, hey, I'm so, I don't know. What do you try to communicate that in some way, or do people detect that?
So this is tricky, right? Like when someone wants to get help, they usually don't want to admit that they need help, because that can be embarrassing, for whatever reason. That's okay. The way that I usually end up trying to angle this is by not trying to like prove that I know more than someone or can lord it over them. It's right. Like we're all at different points in our journey, and other people have gone down their path and have accumulated their experience and their wisdom from their path. I have a different path, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a deeper path. However, the way that it often works with consulting and any kind of coaching or therapy or whatever is you need insight more than anything. It's not that you can't figure these things out on your own, but the way that insight works is that it gives you a particular piece of wisdom that you need at the right time. That's insight.
Yeah. Love me some insight.
Yeah. So we all need insight, and that's the point of having a coach or a therapist. They provide you what you need at the right time, and ideally it's up to you to go off and implement that little nugget. And if it's good insight, then it'll help you. So
it's tough to communicate to someone that you have insight, I guess. I don't know.
It can be, but people recognize it when we're all attuned, I think, to insight. Now, some people have a bad barometer for it, but we're tuned into receiving insight because we're pattern matchers, right? So when that pattern fits, it clicks.
Right.
Like, yeah. Oh, that is insightful.
You can tell when it's more than just words. It's like it's actually resonating with the problem you're having or something that you've been thinking about.
And, like we were talking about at the beginning of this episode, humans are predictable, right? We all are. And one thing that I've found is that the problems that we have in software are really repetitive. So for one, there's a comfort knowing that everyone else is struggling with a lot of the same problems that you are. If you're out there and you're struggling with something, you're not unique, thankfully. That's the good news, because someone else has solved that problem for you. The other aspect of it, I guess, is that when you allow someone to like come in and help you, like you get to ingest that wisdom and that insight, and it becomes like part of you. So then you can extrapolate that into your business the rest of the time as well. Like that's one thing that I really like, because like my goal is not to be like the guy that that other companies have to depend on constantly. Like I'm happy to give continuous help, but it's like I'm not going to come in and say the same insight every week for 52 weeks and then someone's like magically way further down the road. Like the point is like get the insight, implement it, and then you've like leveled up into like a new level where you need different insight, different help.
Yeah. That's pretty fun.
It can be.
I think that's a good place to stop.
Okay.
11:04.
Nice.
Jordan Ambra, the company is Serenity Software.
You can get me on my website at www.serenity.software or follow me on Twitter at Jordan Ambra. Either way.
I need to get back on Twitter.
I kind of like Twitter.
You kind of like
I have a love-hate relationship with it. It gets a little stale. People will repost the same stuff, but
yeah.
I try to post insightful things.
Do you keep a strict follower list, or is it too big? Is that the problem?
What do you mean?
Of like people that you're following.
Oh,
there's just too much crap in your feed.
Yeah, I prune it sometimes. It depends on if someone's annoying me after a while. I'm like, all right.
You're not insightful enough for me.
You stink. Yeah. No, it's just 3 strikes rule.
I see.
No, I am not super diligent about that, but I do like to make sure that the people who I'm allowing to brainwash me on Twitter are generally providing good insights.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll fix all of society's problems.
I hope so.
All right, well, this was a lot of fun. We'll do it again sometime. That'd be great.
Tomorrow, let's do it.
And oh, hang on, that's the end.
That was good.
Thanks everyone. Bye.